can be seated. Good morning, everyone. Just a couple of practical things before we get started. The restrooms are through the back there, back corner over there. And there will be tea and coffee and eats afterwards, but please refrain from taking tea and coffee during the service. That's okay. Dearest Leonie, family, loved ones, and friends, welcome to this celebration of our beloved Louis van der Linde. Thank you to everyone who traveled from far away to be here in person. A special welcome to all the Manatic associates and everyone joining on the live stream. And also thank you very much and a special welcome to Al Bella, our CEO, and Chris Simons, who traveled from Dallas, Texas, to be here today. We have all come together to celebrate the life of Louis van der Linde, a leader, a visionary, and the world's biggest dreamer. A man who bettered the lives of everyone who came into his presence. Louis' legacy continues with all of us and in all of us. And it is the wish of Leonie and the van der Linde family that we celebrate Louis' life today. So as part of our celebration, we're going to do a few things today. We're going to watch a 10-minute video of some of the highlights and some amazing moments in Louis' life. I'm going to share a very short message to encourage us all. And we're going to have some tributes from close Manatic friends and also some close family members. So we'll start with the video.
Pocket and the song in your heart. Keep the lamp of your learning burning bright. Keep your eye on your horizon and a smile on your face as you travel down the highway of your life. Don't listen to those voices that say it can't be done. They build walls where there was never one before. No, there's nothing that can stop you, nothing that can drag you down. If you keep looking for that ever-open door. So if you follow your dream to the end of the road, taking care not to let it fade away. Not fade away. If you follow your dream and you follow it well, it will lead you to the promise of a bright, shiny day. The world was round, and Armstrong had not walked upon the moon. If John and Paul never wrote a song for yesterday, if all of them had given up too soon. Yes, they were always taking chances, looking for the answers that took the whole world to higher ground. So if you follow your dream to the end of the road, taking care not to let it fade away. Not fade away. If you follow your dream and you follow it well, it will lead you to the promise of a bright, shiny day. Keep a dream in your pocket. Keep a dream in your heart. Keep your dream forever. Don't let it fade away. Keep a dream in your pocket. Keep a dream in your heart. Keep your dream forever. Don't let it fade away. Don't follow your dream to the end of the road, taking care not to let it fade away. Not fade away. And if you follow your dream and you follow it well, it will lead but like the rose that comes back with the springtime, you will return to me when springtime comes around. Till the white rose blooms again, you must leave me lonely. So goodbye, my love, till then. Till the white rose blooms again. Till the white rose blooms again. You must leave me lonely. So goodbye, my love, till then. Till the white rose blooms again. Goodbye till then. Goodbye till then.
Place where all may find real peace in the upper room with Jesus. Oh. Busted flat in Baton Rouge, heading for the trains, feeling nearly faded as my jeans. Bobby thumbed a diesel down just before it rained. It took us all the way to New Orleans. I pulled my old harpoon out of my dirty red bandana. I blowed it low while Bobby sang the blues. With them windshield wipers slapping time, Bobby clapping hands, we finally sang up every song that driver knew. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And nothing ain't worth nothing, but it's free. Yeah, feeling good was easy, Lord, when Bobby sang the blues. And buddy, that was good enough for me. It was good enough for me and Bobby McGee. From the coal mines of Kentucky to the California sun, Bobby shared the secrets of my soul. Standing right beside me, Lord, through everything I'd done. And every night she kept me from the cold. Then somewhere near Salinas, Lord, I let her slip away, looking for the home I hope she'll find. And I trade all of my tomorrow.
Must have been cold there in my shadow. To never have sunlight on your face. You were content to let me shine. You always walked a step behind. I was the one with all the glory. You were the one with all the strength. A beautiful smile to ease my pain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I would like to be. I could fly higher than an eagle. You are the wind beneath my wings. Ooh. You are the wind beneath my wings.
Memories of interactions with Louis over the years. Two of them stands out to me. The one was about 5 years ago when Shelley and I visited them in Vianden, Luxembourg for 2 days. It was such a special time. And I will never forget, we sat at the Victor Hugo just having coffee for hours and hours and hours. And all Louis wanted to do was hear about our dreams. And that day, those 2 days, made such a big mark on my life. It changed my life. I also remember when Louis called me the one day and he invited me for coffee, just the two of us, and we met at Gallery 91 in Somerset West. And we had a wonderful lunch, just the two of us, for what seemed about 2 hours. And we just spoke about dreams. And Louis challenged me to write down 100 dreams, which I did. I've still got those 100 dreams that I've written down. You know, I will always remember Louis for his optimism, his interest in the person in front of him, his interest in my life and my dreams, his loving presence, and his unconditional acceptance of the person in front of him. I learned from Louis and Leonie how to dream. I learned about things like applied faith and about dreaming for the first time in my life when I joined Manatech. Whenever you were in Louis' presence, he would always ask you, "What's your dream? But what's your dream?" And he would challenge you to dream bigger and bigger. And he would say, "That's not big enough. It's got to scare you." Like I said just now, whenever you were in Louis' presence, you would always feel unconditional love and acceptance. And I experience his optimism for the present moment, but also his optimism for a brighter future. Louis was truly a dealer in hope. During the first Manatech event I ever attended, I was overwhelmed by the unconditional love and kindness of the van der Linde family and the wider Manatech family. Indeed, an unconditional loving presence of optimism, dreams, kindness, love, and total inclusiveness. This way of loving one another is truly special. And I believe this way of loving flows directly from our Creator. And this is my message this morning. It's all about hope and about a loving presence. And as we celebrate Louis' life this morning, we also celebrate our Creator's loving presence. His special presence and His love inside of each of our hearts. We can celebrate how our loving Father inspires each of us to follow our dreams, and how our Creator loves each and every one of us unconditionally. Yes, today is a sad day because Louis is not physically with us anymore, but we can rejoice because we do have His spiritual presence with us, and His legacy lives on in us and with us. You know, the word inspiration literally means God's breath or God within. And you know, I believe it's the breath of God in the life of Louis that was so inspirational for us. To be this loving, optimistic presence for all of us. And so this morning, I want to encourage us. I want to spend a few minutes just to encourage us. You know, perhaps you're going through a tough time at the moment. Perhaps you are experiencing pain, heartache, perhaps anxiety, stress. Maybe you've lost a loved one. This morning, I want to encourage us of our Creator's loving presence, of His unconditional love for each and every one of us. And so I'm just going to share a few short passages to encourage us. And these are all passages that talk about the nature and the character of our loving Creator. So as I read through these, I want to declare it over Louis' life and over each and every one of us this morning. I want to read a short passage from Colossians 1, from the Message version, which says, "We see God's original purpose in absolutely everything created. For everything, absolutely everything above and below, visible and invisible, everything got started in Him and finds its purpose in Him. He was there before any of it came into existence, and He holds it right up to this moment. He was supreme in the beginning, and He is supreme to the end. From beginning to end, He is there, so spacious and roomy is He, that everything and everyone finds its proper place in Him without crowding. Not only that, but all the broken and dislocated pieces of the universe, people, things, and animals, even atoms, gets properly fixed and fits together in vibrant harmonies, all because of His great love for us." You know, when I saw this verse this week, I was so encouraged. We lost our little doggy this week. And I mean, it's just a dog, right? But I was so encouraged that this Creator of ours cares for humans, for animals, and for creation. I want to just read a few verses from Psalm 139, where David writes, "O Creator, you've searched me. You know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, O loving Father, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am marvelously and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth, you saw my unformed body. All the days of my life were ordained by you and written in your book before one of them came to be." Okay, I'm just going to share one or two last verses and then we'll move on. Psalm 24 says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." We even read in Zephaniah that the Lord, our God, takes great delight in us. He rejoices over you and He dances over you with singing, it says. David writes, "In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand there are pleasures forever. Your unfailing love, O God, is as vast as the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches beyond the clouds. Your righteousness is like the mighty mountains, your justice like the ocean's depth. You care for people and animals, O Lord. How precious is your unfailing love, O God. All humanity finds shelter in the shadow of your wings." And then just the last section here. God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gave away and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with surging. The Lord Almighty is with us. God is our fortress. Come and see what He has done. Be still and know that He is God. God will wipe every tear. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the older things are passing away and the new is coming. So in summary this morning, I just want to encourage us just with three thoughts. Firstly, God's love and presence is the lifeblood of all things, all people, all creation. And when we read the great hymn of creation in Psalm 103, it tells us that nothing would exist without the Lord's constant care of the earth, the heavens, the seas, and His constant care of all the creatures that He created. And the psalmist proclaims that all creation rejoices in Him. Secondly, know this morning that you are constantly loved by God. Know that God knows your suffering, He knows your frailty, He feels your pain. God incarnates Himself into our lives. Look and see. You will find Him. We've never been and we will never ever be separate from Him. God stands vigil over us. For as the scripture says, God neither slumbers nor sleeps. And from before your birth to beyond your death, God is your constant companion. And lastly, I just want to say, all of us are fighting our own battles, and we all are brothers and sisters of one another. And compassion is always called for. To be like God, who is gracious and loving, we also need to be a loving, gracious presence of healing to everyone who crosses our paths. We are not called to dominate. We are called to serve. We're not called to discriminate. We're called to love. We are called to care for the weakest among us. We are called to greet everyone with God's love and grace that He's so freely given us. And so this morning, as we remember Louis, who led by example to be a loving presence, to be optimistic, to be full of hope, to be full of dreams, I want to just read this passage in closing that Leonie asked me to read. It comes from the book The Prophet, and the chapter is Speak to Us on Death. Then Almitra spoke, saying, "We would ask now of death." And he said, "How would you know the secret of death?" He said, "You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depths of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling? Shall he not wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then you shall truly dance. I would now like to invite a few of the closest Magnetic friends to come and pay tribute to Louis. You can come up in this order. First, John Greef, Chris Simons, JP Koster, Franse van Skalkwyk, and then Al Bella. About 4 or 5 minutes max, please.
Good morning, everyone. All right, so this was probably the toughest thing I ever had to really go through, but the one thing I can say is today we celebrate the life of one of the greatest men, well, in my life, and I think thousands of other people's lives as well. He would be dearly missed by thousands, but the most important thing is that his legacy will definitely live on and still touch millions of people's lives. I met him probably at the most important part of my life. When you get out of school and you start losing your ego, when you realize life is much bigger than what you are. I had the privilege of meeting Louis and Leonie through sport. And the beautiful thing is I never knew the journey would become such an important one in my life because I had my own journey, but the most important thing is that I never really learned the most important things in life until I met Louis. Some of the things that comes to mind is, I said to Leonie last week, is I've never seen a man speak so dearly of his wife as Louis did. I remember whenever me and Louis would have coffee or do anything and Leonie enters the room, it is automatically all his focus goes towards Leonie. And really, that taught me quite a big thing because of life, and I wasn't married back then. The funny thing is they actually gave me their IDs to go and get eloped. So I spoke to Louis probably about most of the most important things in my life. I would counsel and sit down with Louis for coffee on the oak tree, underneath his oak tree, and say to him, well, this is where I am. Give me some advice. And I must say 90% of the advice that he gave me is what I followed. And I'm internally grateful today because he was, as someone just said, he was an example. He was an example of someone that kept on growing. He might not have been perfect, but he always worked toward perfection. I remember he once said, he even made his password once in his life, excellence, because that was the thing that he focused on. That's what he wanted in his life, was excellence. And he became so deliberate that he made it a word that he had to do every single day. And that's the thing that he stood for, was love and excellence and humble. He's always been very, very humble, and that really taught me a very important lesson at the time when I met him, because obviously 19 years old, going into the new world, and here this humble man just taught what he did. He always grew in becoming better. He always stood for love. I remember some conversations where he would speak about Vince and Eckhart, and the love that he had for his kids is the love that I had to start developing for my own kids. And it's something every day that I ask myself, what would he do? How would he treat this situation? Because maybe he wasn't perfect, but he was very close, for me as an example that you can go back to someone and ask advice and know that he's in it for you. He always loved every single person that enters his space. He always asked you about your dreams, about where you're going. He always wanted to empower everybody around him. He never did anything for anyone that you could do for yourself. I remember so many things, decisions that I had to make, and then I would sit with him and I think, okay, I'm going to get like the advice I can just go and do exactly. And he would say this or that. And then he leaves it with you. You make that decision. But it was always one of the biggest things that stood out for me and that I wrote down was he always stood for love. He always said more love. It's always about more love and lots of adversities. I must say I've never understood that why someone would want to wish upon you lots of adversities. Today I can say that that's the thing that grew me. That's the thing that developed me. And the beautiful thing is, although he always advised you lots of adversity, he was always there to give you the helping hand and to help you through that instead of just leaving you on your own there. So yeah, I think from my side, I can go into a lot of stories of travel and biltong, and when Leonie travels on shopping, he had a gas braai, and we would make breakfast in the braai, you know, and potjies. And I told Leonie this morning, not too long ago, our last mini road trip through Cape Town was we visited his favorite pasta or Italian place, but every single franchise. The first day we were, I think it was a Monday. The Monday we were in Somerset West. The Tuesday we were here in Stellenbosch. And the Wednesday we went all the way to Paarl to go and have that dish. And curry. How many curries we had when Leonie was away, because Leonie is not very fond of Indian food, but whenever Leonie goes, we would jump in the car and we would go and have a curry. So yeah, I must say there's lots of memories, but the greatest things that really stands and that I would remember is the way he loved every single person and the example that he always stayed in. If he said he's doing this, he's doing that. Whatever he taught, he always did it while he was teaching it. And I think that's probably the most important thing that I will always treasure with him. And I want to leave you with this and say that, yes, he might not be here physically, but I know for a fact he's going to be around for the next 500 plus years. He's always taught that it's not a short-term dream. It's always a 500-year dream. What's your 500-year dream? And I always thought this is why would you think that way? But he always left us with a long-term goal and dream. And I know for a fact that that dream is still going to be lived out. So all my condolences to the family, Leonie, Vince, Eckhart, Yolandi, kids.
Good morning, everybody. I put my crying glasses down. I'm going to try and do this. I truly am such a wuss. Guys, you know, I don't know how to, I've got 4 minutes and I've got to share 15 years in 4 minutes. So I thought I'd write it down because maybe it would stop me from getting emotional. So I'm going to try. So if you have some patience with me, please. So sitting on Friday morning at the Red Tractor up at Peregrine, which is up on top of Solari Pass, I had time to reflect on the journey with the man we had today to celebrate. That was our spot to sneak a naughty breakfast when alone, and a little healthier when there were 3 of us. And often there were 3 of us. We would have these weekly meetings to discuss operations and strategy, however, often interrupted by Leonie telling us to focus and get back to business. You see, Louis had an ability to even get me, this operationally focused guy, off on a path of dreaming and envisaging how we were going to blanket the world with glyconutrients and create 1,000 presidentials to help us achieve this. I think we were both grateful when Leonie bringing us back down to earth with a stone. Come on, you two, focus. Let's get back to the points we are meeting about. Without her, we would have just sat up there on top of the past, dreaming and strategizing big things. Louis' huge vision was contagious and testimony to the thousands of people online today and the hundreds here with us all at Webersburg to celebrate his life and journey. He got us all to understand our why and allowed us to start this fantastic journey of hope, and as he always said so expressionately, fantastic. Even in our last conversations, we spoke about the 1,000 PDs. We laughed out loud, at the good times, the traveling, and the impact we made. We particularly remembered our first trip to the USA together, and that was to Chicago in the middle of winter. I knew nobody. Nobody was sure who we were, and I think they were even more confused and wondering as to who this couple was with this huge, ugly bodyguard with a very serious face and a long black coat. I don't think they ever found out. The standout quality I admired about Louis was his love for his team. The pride he had when one of his downline achieved a leadership status or realized a dream. He was like a father, proudly boasting about one of his children who had done so well. He was genuinely and wholeheartedly invested in every single person in his business. Their success was his success. He was completely dedicated to the other people's success. Never once did he waver or relinquish his absolute belief that his team of like-minded, positive people that surrounded him would not achieve all that we set out to achieve. In those quiet conversations we had, he was at peace, content knowing that he knew he had started a movement that had and would continue to have a profound impact, not only on those here today on this journey, but the thousands that would swell our ranks in the journey still to be completed. Our journey is not done, with so much still to be done. But with so much still to do, he was consciously passing the baton on to us, because he knew his partner in this journey, his life companion, and his soulmate Leonie, the keeper of the moral compass of this journey together, with his army of leaders, would make sure that what had been started would be completed. As I said, the story is not done. It's now up to us. If we all follow and apply the many lessons Louis shared and passed down to us all, we are more than equipped to overcome the adversities we are sure to face and conquer our common goal, which is Louis' goal. I wish Leonie, Vincent, Yolandi, Eckhart, and family, friends, and all watching from home my deepest sympathy. As always, I'm here for each one of you. Today we celebrate a fallen hero. So close. A giant of a man. And from tomorrow we walk committed and steadfast in the path that he set out for us all. Thank you.
Leonie, what an honor you have bestowed on me this morning to share about the person you love most in this world. I first met Louis in May of 2008 as a 22-year-old student. Some of the things that stood out for me when first meeting Louis was his ability to tell a story, his infectious laugh, his ability to inspire, and most importantly, that the future belonged to those that believed in the beauty of their dreams. You see, so many of us dream at night with our eyes shut, but Louis had the ability to dream when he was awake and with his eyes open. Louis believed that all our dreams can come true if we have the courage and determination to pursue them. Reading through his messages to me on WhatsApp this morning, there were a few things that really stood out. First he called me Japes, a term of endearment that only the closest to me call me. Secondly, he inspired until the very end with his messages of encouragement. And lastly, I was reminded about his deep impact he had on my life and shaping of my future. You see, we are all confined to the walls we have built around ourselves, the walls of doubt and fear, the limiting beliefs we have in ourselves, the feelings of not feeling worthy or perhaps not good enough, perhaps even having given up on our dreams. But Louis, till the very end of his days, was someone that not only broke down his own walls, but was on a crusade to break down the walls of others. The influence of Louis' vision and teaching allowed me to speed up my career immensely, as all of my friends took on different career paths, as lawyers, engineers, chartered accountants, and doctors. Louis was an entrepreneur and believed in free enterprise. This allowed me to spread my wings at a very young age and to travel the world, many of these trips being with Louis and Leonie, but most importantly, to become the best version of myself by doing what others thought would be impossible at my age. But then again, what in the world is impossible with someone like Louis by your side? As the older statesman in Manatech, Louis had to keep a tight rein on me as I tried many new things, and on many occasions taking opportunities to enjoy myself maybe a little too much, not thinking of consequences and having the wisdom to play the movie forward. Today, looking back, I can see how necessary it was and how he was always protecting me from because of his love and care. As the old adage goes, behind every man, there's a great woman. In Louis' case, he had the greatest. I would also like to aver that a man with dreams, especially the size of Louis, needs a woman with a substantial vision. This, to me, is the epitome of Leonie's unwavering support for her man, family, and all of us that are part of the Manatech family. Okay, almost done. Louis and Leonie have taught us all the true meaning of teamwork, unconditional love and support, and an immense passion for this wonderful organization. In closing, how lucky am I to have something to say that makes saying goodbye very hard. You see, grief is the price we pay for someone we love. Elvis has left the building, but the music still plays on. Rest in peace, Louis, till we meet again.
And now they give me the mic. I will be master of my emotions. Actually, a privilege to stand here this morning in memory of Louis. And as we said, we yet to celebrate his life. And I can't help by taking myself back to 25 years ago when I actually met Louis and Leonie. Never knew that it's going to change my life totally around, 180 degrees. A man that taught me about integrity, most important, unity. And I can still remember how he said, listen here, if you're not in unity with yourself, how can you be in unity with anything or anybody else? Some things that he taught me, one was to always be on time. You know, people tend to be on time. If something starts at 11, they're here at 11, and he would say, you're actually late. If you're not here 10 minutes before, you're late. And even driving somewhere, and we would get a lift with him, and he would wait 2 minutes for that person. He will then call him and say, listen, here, see you at the venue. Will not wait for anybody to pitch. That taught me a lot about integrity and about being honorable. And the other thing that he really taught me is to stay humble. You know, with his successes and his wife right next to him, I can still remember I used to say, behind every successful man stands an astonished mother-in-law. And he said, now in my case, it's a powerful wife. that stand behind me. So, and I can keep on for more than my 4 minutes to tell you about all the things that Louis installed, not in my life only, but in hundreds or thousands of people's lives. We often listen to recordings from speeches from the past, and it's amazing how all those principles came through those recordings that we listened to. We then make it our own, we teach it to others, and it becomes part of life. The travels we had, I used to say to Louis, thank you, yeah, the 100 dreams, I managed to get to 54 eventually after some struggle. And I used to say, listen, yeah, I don't want to travel abroad. I mean, South Africa is big enough. There's a lot to see here in South Africa, until that first trip that we joined them to the Vic Falls and all the fun we had there. And that's one thing that I could see in Louis' eyes, that excitement when the next person enjoys himself, doing something that he thought was impossible to do before. And now he managed to do it, to achieve it. And I'm speaking from family, associates, friends. I think we could all see that in Louis. And the slogans that we saw here by him, there's one that I didn't see on there. I can remember one night at the restaurant, there was 3 couples. They had a bit of a challenge with the waiter. And they got a bit loud. And Louis would just get up and walk to them and say, listen here, you're either right or rich, but you can't be both, you know? So stop fighting here with the waiter. And that's what I appreciated about him. It was never about fighting or being loud and noisy to make a stand, but to be yourself, to be in love. And then he often took us back to the 6 emotions, and one of them was always, just more love. When we have a struggle with a family member, Francois, just more love. Love them anyway. With a business partner out there, just love them anyway. And that's things that really stand out for me, will stand out for me for the rest of my life. And from Mabel and myself, deepest condolences, Leonie, Vince, Eckhart, the family. I'm not going to mention all the names now, but really something that we can take with us for the rest of our lives. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you, Leonie, for giving me this honor to be able to participate in this wonderful celebration of life. For those who are not familiar with Manatech, I'm the CEO for Manatech out of Dallas, Texas. Today we're celebrating the life of Louis, and celebrating life means acknowledging the life the life that he has had, but it's also applauding their life and rejoicing in the fact that they lived a meaningful life that touched everyone present with an understanding of who the person was that just passed and what they lived for. I'm going to apologize. I won't be able to do this in 4 minutes because I'm carrying the messages of many people that I think you will kind of get a sense of Louis' life through these people. And the first person is Mr. Stan Frederick. So I'm here, I stand in front of you in behalf of the board of directors of Manatech and the thousands of people around the world that Louis really impacted, whether he knew it or not. So Stan said, recently I had the opportunity to honor Louis and Leonie on the occasion of the receiving of the Manatech Lifetime Achievement Award. I recall at that time what an incredible impact he had in our world, and now with his passing, we feel a huge hole in our hearts, knowing that Louis is working, knowing that Louis was working with him for almost 2 decades. And it reminds him of a teaching of Marcus Aurelius. What we do now echoes in eternity. His life is a testimony to that truth. In 2017, my son Linde and I were invited by Louis and Leonie to visit them in South Africa. They took us to see an orphanage in one of the poor sections of Cape Town. We watched in awe as 2 kids about 8 to 10 years old guided across the old gymnasium floor to a wondrous waltz. The music of their grace transported us out of this world of poverty, inspiring us all with the feeling that these kids would also rise above their existence to a happy and productive life, all because of Louis and Leonie's generosity and vision. The same vision that inspired Manatech to create Mana Relief and its successor, the M5M Foundation. I don't know if you know this, but it is Louis and Leonie that inspired Manatech to start M5M because of what they had done here for the children at risk. Louis' legacy extends from his wife Leonie to his 2 sons, to thousands of men and women who attribute their success to Louis' inspiring writing, chat, speeches, and WeChats, and WhatsApps, I guess, now also. It all began when Louis and Leonie found Embratos mixed in with the kids' food would result in them missing less days in school, make them better grade, and grow stronger. He dreamed of a day when everyone would have the opportunity for such a great product. He began bringing it in, and however he could, until it became so successful, Manatech had to open in South Africa. It was not in our radar as a target market, but he made it a compelling case, so we agreed, and the rest is history. Louis' dream came true, and consequently, thousands of his followers have seen their hopes and dreams come true, as well as we just heard today. What he has dreamed, inspired, and built would echo in eternity, truly a 500-year dream. My family feels so blessed to have known Louis, to have worked with him, and be inspired by his generosity, brilliance, vision. His memory will continually bless our lives and influence our destiny. So that was from Mr. Stan Frederick, our chairman of the board. Luciano Fidalgo asked me to also convey some words to you guys. He said, I remember the first time Louis and I spoke about the Manatech products for the kids in the soup kitchen. He was beyond excited. For him at that time, it was just about finding hope for the children. After he purchased a substantial amount of product for the soup kitchen, you could see the glow in his face. It wasn't until a few weeks after the children had taken the products that Louis began to understand the power of what he had found. And then it was, get out of my way, because Leonie and I are going to go platinum. From that small beginning in Cape Town, and we just reminded by the saying, do not despise the days of small beginnings. From that small beginning in Cape Town and a huge vision, he created a legacy that will last many years. Children are living better lives, and thousands of people around the world are better off because Louis decided to go out and do something that was not comfortable but was necessary. He was loved around the world and became an example for all of us to follow. Let's keep his vision alive, 1,000 presidentials in South Africa. Rest well in your journey, my friend. And that was Luciano Fidalgo. I'm also conveying a message from Mr. Ray Robbins, memory of Louis. Louis van der Linden was one of my favorite people ever. He was high energy and destined for great results in whatever he pursued. His was a life well lived because he rescued all around him. He loved to serve mankind. He delighted in the success of others more so than himself. His legacy will continue to shine in the many lives he gave better health, better finance, better purpose, greater discipline, greater humility, greater work ethic. He motivated and inspired with every action he took. Many owe him for who they have become, and you can't repay him by improving yourself every day of your life and by finding others you can lift up as he did you. When Louis walked into the room, people took notice. They knew he was bearing gifts and worthwhile knowledge. You can have that same presence and attitude. Louis' family can be very proud of what he did for them and take much joy in bringing him to mind regularly. His family included all the Manatechers worldwide and all of the M5M orphans worldwide, all who wrote and promoted self-improvement books and tapes, and all who love to sell what is valuable and what is good. We love you, Louis, and we will lift you up in memory forever. Ray Robbins. Sorry, I'll try to take my 3 minutes now for me. I've known Louis for a while, and there's a couple of things I remember very vividly. And I have to say, Leonie, that I only regret not having been able to spend more time with Louis and be able to benefit from all the amazing characteristics that were displayed today and talked about today. First time I met Louis and Leonie, I was 30-some years old. I came to their house with a whiteboard and easel and a white box because I was going to show them how to become rich with soap. I walked into their house. They had a couple of beautiful cars in the front. The house was palatial. I stood there in the living room and wondered, should I be asking them to show me how to become successful? But you know what? They sat there and with much humility listened to a young man just share his dream. And I think the rest was history. That was their first time, I think, seeing the circles, as we used to call it. Little did I know, that was the day that we were going to start a legacy together around the world. The second thing that I remember of Louis that always stayed with me is when he would put out of his billfold his dreams. It was tattered, it was coming apart, but he had it in his billfold all the time. We cannot understand how, I can't fathom how important that is for every one of us to have lived around a man such as him that understood the power of a dream. And yes, he had a dream, and that dream is that there would be 1,000 presidentials in South Africa. So for that, I went back and I looked at something that also Louis struck me with for a long time, which was a message from Garcia. And today I want to deliver that again, because it's one thing to be a dreamer, but it's another thing to get it done. And I just want to make sure we don't forget that Louis and Leonie were people who made it happen. They got it done. They just didn't dream it, they got it done. A message from Garcia to Garcia is an essay that was written in 1899 expressing the value of individual initiative and consciousness in carrying out a difficult assignment. The essay is a story of a daring escapade performed by American soldier Lieutenant Andrew Rowan just before the Spanish-American Wars. The essay describes Rowan carrying a message from President William McKinley to General Calixto Garcia, a leader of the Cuban insurgent, somewhere in the mountains of Cuba. No one knew where that was. The essay contrasts Rowan's self-driven effort against this is not my word, but this was what was written, the imbecility of the average man, the inability and unwillingness to concentrate on a thing and do it. The point I wish to make is that McKinley gave Rowan a letter to be delivered to Garcia. Louis has given us a letter. And Rowan took the letter and did not ask, where is it at? How will we do it? We don't know. But by the eternal, there is a man whose form should be cast in bronze and the statue placed in every college in the land. And that would be a statue of Louis van der Linde. It's not book learning young men need or instruction about this and that, but a stiffening of the vertebrae, having a backbone, which will cause them to be loyal to a trust, to act promptly, concentrate their energies to do the thing. If you give Louis a message to Garcia, you know that message will be delivered, although the mountains, the wilderness, the desert, the torrents, the broad lagoons, and the sea himself separate him from Garcia. He will get it done. I think he got it done. And we are all better off because he did. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. And my condolence, Akkad, Vincent, and Yolandi, and Leonie, in behalf of the entire Manatech family. Thank you.
Thank you to all the Manatech friends who shared with us. We'll now call upon some of the closest family, Peter, Louis' brother, and also Eckhart and Vincent to come and say a few words.
This comes as a surprise. I thought Vince or X will be before me, then I can hear what they say and then what I need to say then afterwards. But all right. It's difficult to tell a story of 67 years in 5 minutes. Obviously, I've known Louis for a very long time. I was born in the family, so but there are many things there are things that I want to tell you about Louis that you didn't know, and that you see now, reflecting after all the years. The difference in our age is 18 months. And we did a lot of things together. We used to play table tennis for days. We used to play tennis together, and we used to run together. Louis was very competitive, and we had our fights until we were 10 years old. And my father was watching it through the window, and I didn't know, but Louis was teasing me all the time. And that day, I just had enough, so I threw down my suitcase, and I gave him a good ironing, because I was a bit bigger than him. And my dad left us, and after that, we became the best of friends. We did everything together, really. And Louis was he was not a fighter. Louis was not a man who wanted to fight with anybody. He's a man who rather wanted to stop the fight, and he had a lot of love in him. He would rather sort the problem out without having a fight. He had provincial colors in 3 disciplines in athletics, in cross-country. In athletics, Southern Eastern Transvaal colors, and cross-country in Eastern Transvaal colors, and then marathons, Northern Transvaal colors. One thing that I did beat him in is in playing musical instruments. I play quite a number of instruments, and Louis also played guitar and piano, but I did better than him. So at least that's one way that I could beat him. I couldn't beat him in anything else. Then we both went to study at RAU, and we used to, because we was playing guitar and singing quite well and often and whatever, we used to serenade for the girls at the hostels and whatever. And that takes quite a bit of your time, because then everyone knows you on the campus and say, oh, that's a guy that was singing last night or whatever. So I knew many girls, and that distracts you a little bit. Louis was very focused. He got his BCom degree, and ek het net koffie gedrink, gevry en gitaar gespeel. And I didn't get my degree, and I never became a teacher, so I started working at Total after a while. I took the courageous decision to rather leave before they asked me to go. Louis, did you know that Louis worked for a boss? He worked for a boss for one day, and then he decided it's not for him, and he didn't work for a boss another day. It was not his inspired. Louis wanted to make money, big money. Some schemes worked and some not, and it wasn't plain sailing. There were times that they were really poor. I think Leonie told the story once or twice, and there were times that they had to share a cappuccino. But Manatech was Louis' dream come true. He wanted to make a difference in the world, as you all have heard already. There's one thing Louis didn't know. Louis didn't know how to give up. If you want to speak to Louis about your dreams, he would give you an ear. If you want to speak to Louis about things that you have a problem with, he would listen to it. But if you want to speak to Louis about how bad it is and how you want to give up, we didn't have time to listen to that. He will stop you very quickly. If you could get a guy who could write the best book in the world of giving up, Louis wouldn't even spend 10 cents on buying it. Louis never spoke anything negative about anybody. Not one of you. Yeah. I've been in his house many times. He didn't once speak anything bad about anyone in Manatech or in anything else at all. It was like my father. We used to sit around the table, and my dad would say, if you don't have something good to say about anyone, keep quiet. And Louis was just the same. He never spoke bad about anybody. I won't be much longer. Oh, don't worry. I was always on standby when Leonie went to a trip. She goes up to somewhere, I don't know where. Gauteng or wherever. She goes away for 3 or 4 days, and then me and Louis have the whole Somerset West for ourselves. We can go for curry, and we can go for curry, and we can go for curry. So we knew all the curry places in town, and Leonie was never impressed. And I think I'll spoil her and send a picture of the 3 curries here. And we know that we're doing prawns and a lamb and whatever. And she just returns us that she would just say, "Lieve Father." So yeah. It was Louis was he always when he had curry. John maybe remember that. If the curry must always be hot, and if it burns him, he will wipe his face and says, "Hy's warm, my kroon." It means it's hot, my crown. So that's what he enjoyed, hot curry. The last 3 months was difficult for the family, but Leonie, I want to say to you, thank you for never giving up on Louis. Not once was she impatient. Not once did she say she doesn't see a way to go forward. She was always very tolerant with Louis, and Louis was sometimes a handful because when he had his dialysis, he wanted the garage pie, and he always wanted the curry chicken or piri-piri chicken pie. And if he doesn't get it, it's difficult. And she said, but it's not good for you. You're not supposed to eat these things. He would want his pie, and in the end, she just gave up. And Louis ate what he wanted to eat. And another thing that I want to say about Louis never complained. Not once for the last, how many years was it? 5 years that he became ill. And even to the last that he could speak, Louis never complained once. What I did once, I surprised him. I came down the corridor, whatever, and with a guitar, and I was singing a song, Jonathan Livingston Seagull or whatever, coming into the room and singing to him, whatever. He couldn't speak at the time anymore, but he could listen. He could hear what I was singing to him, and he cried. That was how he said, "Thank you." So, I want to read a little song that someone wrote. You all must have heard it, but it goes like this. He says, "We laugh, we cry, we live, we die. And when we're gone, the world goes on. We love, we hate, we learn too late. How small we are, how little we know. We hear, we touch, we talk too much of things we had no knowledge of. We see, we feel, we can't conceal how small we are, how little we know. See how the time goes swiftly by. We don't know how, we don't know why. We reach so high, we fall so low. The more we learn, the less we know. Too soon the time to go will come. Too late the world to carry on. And so we leave too much undone, like the 1,000 presidentials. How small we are, how little we know. We laugh, we cry, we live, we die. And when we're gone, the world moves on. We love to hate, we love, we hate. We learn too late how small we are, how little we know. We say the final goodbye, Levis. I miss you, my brother.
Some people eat to live. Some people live to eat. That's one of the things that I got from my dad. I think anybody who knows me knows, well, my mum would always tell you the first thing I'd ask before I left home for school is, what are we eating tonight? Another story not a lot of people maybe know is, I think I was about 6. My tiny Linky will always tell the story. She was just dating my Uncle Pierre in the house in Mill Street in the Strand. And I think my Uncle Pierre, to impress her and say, look at my nephew, and look at this, and take a wrapper, a chocolate wrapper, and just rustle it. And about 2 minutes later, I'd come running and say, wat het julle? Wat het julle? So I think a love of food, and of not just the food, but the good times surrounding it. And what that means. And most people here have already spoken about that, about the meaning of sitting down with my dad and having a conversation, how he would listen to them. And naturally that goes around coffee and food and conversation. And that's one big thing I got from my dad, is that love of communion, love of interacting with other people. I agree with my Uncle Peter. It's a quality he had. He never said anything bad of anyone. And that's amazing. Another thing, massive thing I learned from my dad is gratitude. We were were very, very fortunate to travel a lot as kids with my parents, to tennis tournaments, to travel around the world, to visit. And one of the big trips I remember is a trip to England in 1996, and I was fortunate enough to take my best friend along, who was the son of one of my dad's business partners, and we got to watch Wimbledon, 2-3 days of Wimbledon. In any tennis player's life, that's an unbelievable achievement, just to watch and not even play. And that was my second trip to Wimbledon. I'd been there in 93 as well. It shows you how lucky we were. And we had watched and we had done our thing, and the next day we were trying to get a tube, waiting for a train. I think we were going, or maybe we were waiting for the TGV to Paris. I can't remember, but we were waiting in the train station. And I'll never forget, one of us said, I'm bored. And for those of you who knew my dad maybe 30 years ago, he could get quite angry. And that was, if that's never a reason to get angry, I don't know what is, because everything he'd done for us to make that trip happen, all the hard work he'd put in. So from that day on, I can't say from that day on, but looking back, definitely shaped me into being a grateful adult and someone who values gratitude for everything that people do for you. And it's not something we often practice. We're quick to look at things we're ungrateful for, unhappy about. But Louis van Linde was someone who was grateful, even just to wake up with breath in his lungs. Something I'm very grateful to my father for. I had a few other things written, but they're not important. What's important is the way that my dad left the world. And we can see today how many people's hearts he touched. how special it was to so many people and to us. I do have something I'd like to read from the tennis side of my dad's journey. My mum, as many of you probably know, she's an unbelievable tennis coach and had many champions. And one of those champions was Justin Bauer. He's a South African Springbok Davis Cup player. And these are the words he wrote about my dad this week. When I was a kid growing up in Kempton Park, South Africa, I dreamed of being a professional tennis player. I was lucky enough to have one of the greatest coaches I've ever met live several miles from my home. We had some hard times financially, and I could often not afford lessons or travel to tournaments. And Louis van der Linde, the husband of my coach, made so many things happen for me financially. Overseas trips, full-time training program, opportunities to excel. It takes so much luck to get the chance to follow a dream. But what you don't realize when you're young is that other remarkable people who will put the full strength of their talents to work to make your dreams come true. Giant-hearted, passionate, daring and giving individuals that are so rare. It's pure chance if you even benefit from their light shining on you. I know I was one of the most blessed and fortunate kids ever, and I'm eternally grateful. Louis, may you rest in peace. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Justin Bauer. So for me, it's how he touched people. It's his infectious laugh. It's his pure joy when you enter the room, or even calling on the phone from Nelspruit. And I'd call my mum and she'd say, "It's your son," and you could just hear in the background, he'd say, "My son." Always as if it's the first time he's ever seen you. It's like you were just born. So much joy. The promise to my dad was everything. I never realized this, but my mom told me the other day that the swimming pool that we built at our house in Birchley was a promise my dad made. And against all odds and financial troubles, it was something that he fulfilled. That's something that I find in myself every day, that it's my mission to fulfill my promises. So once you say something, you follow through. That was probably the biggest thing with my dad. Lastly, I just want to tell a story about our days in Birchley at the tennis courts. And I had a BMX bike. It's a blue bike with one gear. And my dad was at that time fighting fit. I think he ran the Comrades the previous year and was training for the next year as well. And I came down, I was riding with my bike, and they went to the car ahead. I think it was a Saturday. We spent the whole day at the courts on Saturday. So I think it was a Saturday afternoon, about 12 o'clock. And I came with my bike, but just before that, they had driven and parked at the park. So Birchley set up is the large school here, and then there's a church here. And as you go down Mupani Road, it's a little bit of an incline. And when you're 10 years old, I think incline feels like this. And when you go back, it's actually like this. But it was definitely downhill. And they'd parked there, and they were getting their stuff out for the day of tennis. And I came down the hill. And as I was riding my bike from home, my front brakes went. And I knew that I had back brakes, but my dad had told me my back brakes went. And I had front brakes, but my dad told me, don't ever use your front brakes on their own, because you're going to flip over forwards. Don't ever use your front brakes on their own. So I trusted my dad 100% and wasn't going to use my front brakes. So I started descending this hill. And as I'm within earshot, I start yelling, "My brieke werk nie, my brieke werk nie." And my dad turns around and drops everything. And as I'm flying by, almost grabs me. But he just misses me. And there I go, down the hill. And there goes my dad after me. And running. And I'm building speed. And at the end of this hill, down the bottom of the road here, there's the block with the field there. And if you go up left, then you can break your speed. But if you keep going, the train tracks are about 500 meters down the bottom. So I'm moving, and my dad's moving, and we're moving together. And I'm sure in his head, he was thinking, please, God, my son, please just turn left at the front there. And we moved down, and then right at the end, I turn up. And he stopped me there, and he said, what happened? What happened? And then I told him, well, this is the story. My brakes didn't work. And I just think the mixture between relief and anger that I didn't just press my front brakes a little bit to stop. But that was the story that I remember, just the relief in his eyes that I was safe and that everything was fine. So that's not entirely the speech I wrote at all today. But I think if we can take away from our experiences with Louis, what everyone has said here today so far, is a man who was ambitious beyond belief. He was definitely one of the most ambitious people you were ever going to meet. And a lot of people didn't understand that and maybe took that for arrogance. But it wasn't that. It was that he believed he was destined for something greater. He believed that he was going to bring people with him wherever he was going. And he didn't leave anyone behind. Didn't leave anyone behind. And even though we had our differences, my dad and I, in my last 5 years of time with him, I got to spend a lot more time with him and truly understood that he was always just trying to do the best he could as a father for us and be the best husband he could be. And my purpose in life is to be a man as great as what he was. Thank you. Sorry, Vince, I just have one more piece to read. I forgot about this. It's a poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I think it very clearly states my dad's life. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. My father succeeded.
Good morning, everybody. Firstly, I want to thank all of you for being here today, truly, from our entire family. Today, I would like to celebrate with you the life of my father, Carl August Louis van der Linde, whom I know made an impact in all of our lives in some way or another. Dad grew up as the eldest of 4 children in a town where, as he put it, you didn't know you were poor because everyone around you was also poor. He told stories of the high-felt winters where you put water out the night before because the pipes would freeze up at night and there'd be nothing coming out the taps the next morning. In the mornings, he could hear the school bell from the kitchen table. He'd kiss Amma Grikkie and Appa Dani goodbye. he would jump the fence and meet his schoolmates running across the rugby field, listening to the breaking of the frosted white. He would kiss them goodbye, jump the fence, and meet his schoolmates running across the rugby field, listening to the breaking of the frosted white grass under their bare feet. You only had one pair of shoes, which was to be worn on Sundays. At night, everyone huddled around the Aga stove for heat. No television. No television, no Wi-Fi, no electricity until he was 16. He was devoted to family. He spoke about his parents with fondness and admiration. Even though he didn't agree with them on many, many things, he remained devoted to them and loved them deeply. He finished school, did military service, and went to varsity. He had an absolute love for tennis. And while playing on Rand Afrikaans University's courts one day, he met the love of his life. She didn't quite see the vision. At first, the dad was ambitious. He had other plans, for which I, for one, am obviously very grateful. Dad was a natural-born Jan Plannetjies, aka entrepreneur. He lasted one day at Trust Bank, I think it was Trust Bank, and lost his appetite for a boss. He bought a bunch of gun safes and loaded them on a high-ace bakkie and started selling them to farmers. He was into so many ventures. Some worked, some didn't. He was quickly making good money, and he surprised Mom at work. She worked at the ACI in Johannesburg, and he would take her for lunch off to Joburg Central with his 125cc bike and her on the back. I think they only had one helmet, and the other one was a little pink bicycle plastic thing. He convinced her to quit her job and start her own tennis coaching business. Mom was probably one of his toughest prospects. Even then, he was bent on being your own boss. His bravery, ambition, and positive mental attitude was etched in our character, not through his not through his dictation, but through his delivery of these qualities in our daily lives. When I was 4, Mom got a summer job at Camp Green Lane, Pennsylvania. I don't remember much, except that it was hot, humid, and I played Don McLean's Bye Bye Miss American Pie all day on repeat until someone switched it off. Dad would bring Eckhart after weeks of being away. Dad would bring Eckhart from South Africa and surprise us. And we would tour the US as a family, making memories. Dad was selling insurance at the time. He was told that he would never make it on his own, and that he would have to be part of one of the big brokerages if he wanted any chance of success. True to his nature, Dad went on his own and became one of the most successful independent insurance salespeople in Johannesburg, competing with big companies and being invited to all the highest achiever events. Mom's tennis school grew, and when Dad had a good quarter, we traveled. Dad loved spending money as much as he loved making it. He was a river. He was a river that flowed. And I learned some of my greatest lessons on affluence and wealth manifestation through his example. Many times when an up-and-coming tennis star couldn't afford the costs of being on the tennis tour, Dad would pay the bills. He couldn't resist a possible rags to riches story. Later, when he spent most of his time at home, I would often walk in on him crying in front of the television to Britain's Got Talent. Or Pretty Yende, performing in La Scala. He would, through tears, turn off the television and regale her story to me for the thousandth time on how she came from Piet Retief, a little town in Mpumalanga, with nothing but her dreams. Dad loved success story and had to be where the most successful people were, even if they just had a salad and serviced a drink. Once on one of our tours where Eckhart and a friend of ours were with, they decided to go to the Ritz in Paris just for a drink. But it was raining outside, and they didn't have the cash for all of us to go in. We were 9 and 10. So they left us outside in the middle of the square by the fountain. And they found us an hour later singing Nkosi Sikelele at the top of our voice. So all the French people driving past us. Nico me Boca. It was just after we won the World Cup. Somewhere around there. He was tenacious, often telling the story of Ted Turner winning the America's Cup, sailing through a hurricane. In the story, Ted Turner captained his boat to victory. Against all odds, he disappeared for days into a storm and came out the other side when all hope was lost. His whole crew just in their underwear, with their clothes used for sails, because everything else had been destroyed. He once, on one of our first trips overseas skiing, he didn't understand the ski lift so well. Especially in Europe, where you have to sit on the thing and ski your way up. And so one of his favorite stories was regaling this. He used to regale the story of how he would go up the hill, and then a few meters up, he lost one of his sticks. And then he thought, well, I can come down with one stick and the skis. And then another few meters up, he lost the other stick. And then halfway up the slope, he lost the one ski. And he managed to balance. Actually, he started up the ski lift, and within about 20 meters, he had fallen over. But true to his nature, he didn't let go. And for any of you who've ever been on a European ski lift where you have to ski your way up, it can be brutal. And he held on for dear life with his skis and his sticks still attached to him. And after a few meters, lost the one and the other pole, then lost the one ski, and almost at the top lost the other ski. Then he let go, figuring that there's no use reaching the top without any skis, because they have to walk down anyway. He described himself as a one-man snowstorm going up the hill, because that's what it looked like from down below, must have been. His power was in his ability to make you feel like somehow it was all going to turn out right. He left you feeling like a winner, and that you should that you should laugh through life because one day, very soon, you're going to have won. And what then? So keep on creating new adventures for yourself. That was him. He would win and then lose it and then win. And I'm convinced it was just to create new adventures for himself. He was my father. He was my mentor. He was my friend. This is not an end for me. This is not an end for us. This is a beginning. And somewhere, in some new adventure, there's a one-man snowstorm on the helm of a ship called Tenacious. Just come out of a hurricane in his underwear, looking into the distance at a new dawn, shouting, "Hoy nosotros vamos adelante." Today we sail on.
Thank you, Peter, Eckhart, and Vincent for sharing with us. We'll now listen to a song, and then I'll end with a short reading for us.
Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. When the shadows of this life have flown, I'll fly away. Like a bird from prison bars has flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, yes, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
Leonie asked me just to end with this short reading from the book The Prophet, and it's called The Farewell. And it is with this belief and this knowledge that I say, you are not enclosed within your bodies, nor confined to houses or fields. That which is you dwells above the mountain and roves with the wind. It is not a thing that crawls into the sun for warmth or digs holes in darkness for safety, but a thing free, a spirit that envelops the earth and moves in the ether. This would I have you remember in remembering me. That which seems most feeble and bewildered in you is the strongest and the most determined. Is it not your breath that has erected and hardened the structure of your bones? And is it not a dream which none of you remember having dreamt, that builded your city and fashioned all there is in it? Could you but see the tides of that breath, you would cease to see all else. And if you could hear the whispering of the dream, you would hear no other sound. Fare you well, people of Orphalese. This day has ended. It is closing upon us even as the water lily upon its own tomorrow. What was given us there, we shall keep. Farewell to you and the youth I have spent with you. It was but yesterday we met in a dream. You have sung to me in my aloneness, and I of your longings have built a tower in the sky. But now our sleep has fled, and our dream is over, and it is no longer dawn. The noontide is upon us, and our half-waking has turned to fuller day, and we must part. And if our hands should meet in another dream, we shall build another tower in the sky. Let's just bow our heads for a short prayer. Dear loving Heavenly Father, we are here today before you with gratefulness in our hearts. We thank you for blessing us with the precious life of Louis van der Linde, a husband, a father, a brother, and a friend to many, a leader, a visionary, and the world's biggest dreamer. Today we give thanks for Louis' beautiful example of leadership, unconditional love, and inspirational presence. Father, I pray for each person here today. No matter what they're going through, I pray that you help them know that you are near to them and that you love them unconditionally, and that you have great plans for each person here. Dear Father, fill us now with your unconditional love and help us to be a loving presence with all we come in contact with. Amen. That concludes our celebration service. Please join us for some tea and coffee and some eats outside.
Where all may find real peace in the upper room with Jesus. Oh, busted flat in Baton Rouge, heading for the trains, feeling nearly faded as my jeans. Bobby thumbed a diesel down just before it rained. It took us all the way to New Orleans. I pulled my old harpoon out of my dirty red bandana. I blowed it low while Bobby sang the blues. With them windshield wipers slapping time, Bobby clapping hands, we finally sang up every song that driver knew. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And nothing ain't worth nothing, but it's free. Yeah, feeling good was easy, Lord, when Bobby sang the blues. And buddy, that was good enough for me. It was good enough for me and Bobby McGee. From the coal mines of Kentucky to the California sun, Bobby shared the secrets of my soul. Standing right beside me, Lord, through everything I'd done. And every night she kept me from the cold. Then somewhere near Salinas, Lord, I let her slip away, looking for the home I hope she'll find. And I'd trade all of my tomorrow.
must have been cold there in my shadow. To never have sunlight on your face. You were content to let me shine. You always walked a step behind. I was the one with all the glory. You were the one with all the strength. A beautiful face without any. A beautiful smile to ease my pain.